Oceanographer Tom embarked on a Caribbean yacht adventure with his wife Julia and their two children, Cassie and Ben. While Tom and Ben were deep into their fishing and Cassie was absorbed in her device, Julia took a spontaneous dive into the calm waters. But soon, a wave of anxiety washed over her, as if something massive and unseen lurked beneath. Though the sea remained tranquil, Julia couldn't shake her dread. At the same time, the yacht's equipment began malfunctioning, yet Tom, engrossed in his fishing, paid no mind. As Julia's discomfort escalated, she started feeling weak, soon realizing she was in danger. Her attempts to call for help went unheard as her family remained distracted. The water seemed to drag her further from the boat. At last, Tom heard her distressed cries. He quickly took the helm and steered the yacht towards her. Diving in, Tom and the children managed to pull Julia back aboard, reviving her just in time. Tom was furious, reminding Julia of his rule about notifying others before swimming. Julia apologized, and the family soon moved past the ordeal, focusing on the upcoming celebration, Ben's 13th birthday. Tom lit the candles and the family gathered to sing to Ben, with Cassie snapping a photo to capture the joyful moment. Right after, Cassie's boyfriend called, asking if she had gone swimming. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by the brewing storm in the background. Though worried, Cassie was reassured of his safety just before the call dropped. She informed her parents about the storm, and soon, strange tremors shook the yacht. Rushing to the deck, they found the sea littered with massive whale carcasses. Tom explained that during storms, whales could get disoriented, but these were close enough to the yacht to be a threat. Determined to assess the situation, Tom dived into the water again, returning injured after a sharp impact with the propeller. Julia stitched his wounded shoulder, and Tom revealed that the yacht's shafts were likely bent, perhaps from a collision with a whale's tail, leaving them stranded. With no working radio and no signal, Cassie's attempts to reach the outside world failed. Tom calculated their resources. They had 4 days of water left and could only hope they were on a known shipping route. Suddenly, strange sounds from outside pulled them back onto the deck. Above them, glowing objects began plummeting from the sky. As they descended closer, Tom realized they were not meteorites but satellites. Risking it, Tom started the engine, managing to steer clear of the falling debris. However, the engine ultimately failed. With a satellite crashing dangerously close, a powerful gust hit, sending the instruments into chaos once more. The terrified family huddles inside the yacht as it's violently tossed by the waves. They don life jackets, bracing for the worst. Suddenly, a strange ringing sound fills the air, causing nosebleeds and waves of nausea. Desperate, Tom tries to signal for help with a flare gun, but it proves useless. They barely survive the night, and when morning comes, they're relieved to be alive. However, they discover a large hole in the side of the yacht. Miraculously, it's still afloat. Stepping outside, they're stunned. The ocean is gone, and the yacht now sits on a rocky outcrop in the middle of a barren desert where the sea once was. Later, Tom tries to calm his family, assuring them that not everyone could have perished. Taking measurements, he realizes something is off. The compass is wrong. North isn't where it should be, indicating that the Earth's poles have shifted, an event that has happened before but not for millennia. The sea has retreated to the former land, and humanity may not have survived. Cassie, overwhelmed by this grim realization, locks herself in the cabin, while Julia begins inventorying their remaining supplies. Ben, meanwhile, releases a cluster of colorful balloons into the sky, hoping they'll be noticed by any survivors. Tom turns on the radio, sending out distress signals. To his surprise, there's a response. It's from NATO, the captain of a small submersible. NATO explains that they survived the catastrophe because they were deep underwater when it occurred, but all communication systems are down, and rescue efforts are futile. NATO predicts the sea will return in about a week, and when it does, it will be catastrophic. He advises the family to seek higher ground. Julia orders the children to pack up, while Tom asks NATO if he can save their children. Unfortunately, the submersible is small, and NATO's partner has died, leaving room for only one. After some negotiation, Tom persuades NATO to take both children and provides their coordinates. Tom plots a course on the map, promising to meet the submersible in a few days. The next morning, as they prepare to leave, Tom steps onto the deck and spots a man with a dog approaching. He greets the stranger, but quickly realizes the man is injured. Offering him water, Tom is caught off guard when the man suddenly punches him in the face. Julia watches in horror as the stranger drives a makeshift spear into Tom's chest. As Tom collapses, the dog holds Julia at bay while she stands frozen in terror, realizing there's no saving her husband. Julia flees to the yacht with the man in pursuit wounding her arm. Despite her injury, she climbs aboard. Hearing her screams, Cassie and Ben rush to help, and together, they barricade the cabin doors. Julia hides the children in a locker, giving Cassie the flare gun and instructing her to use it only as a last resort. The intruder eventually breaks through the door. Julia, hiding in the bathroom, tries to tend to her wound. Meanwhile, the man, clearly famished, heads straight for the galley and grabs some food, beginning his search of the yacht. Julia grips a kitchen knife tightly as she enters the cabin, but the woman aboard leaps into the water, hiding beneath the yacht. The killer peers through a gap but fails to spot her. Suddenly, Julia faces an unexpected attack from a dog, forcing her to defend herself and fatally wounded. The man's ears prick up at the dog's yelp, and he rushes outside to discover the lifeless body. Meanwhile, Julia cleverly climbs back onto the yacht through a porthole on the opposite side, only to fall directly into the killer's grasp. He overpowers her, throwing her onto a couch and choking her. Cassie witnesses the scene unfold and realizes she must act. In desperation, she opens a locker and fires at the man. The shot sends him stumbling, but the flare ignites the yacht in flames. Julia shouts for the children to escape while she makes her way into the galley. Although injured, the killer lunges at her again, but Julia kicks him away, grabs their packed bags, and leaps overboard. Ben discovers their father's lifeless body, and Cassie collapses in tears beside it. Julia kisses her deceased husband, but sees the killer emerging from the burning yacht. She quickly takes the children and flees as the boat explodes behind them. The family races across a barren, rocky desert and soon finds refuge in a canyon with a trickling stream. Unfortunately, the water is salty and undrinkable. Cassie shares her meager supply with her brother, but he refuses, burdened with guilt, believing their troubles stem from the balloons he let go. Cassie echoes his sentiments, but Julia firmly reassures them, explaining that her son meant no harm. She urges the children to gather their strength for the long trek ahead. Just then, she spots the killer still hot on their trail, and they quicken their pace. As night falls, Ben finds the carcass of a hammerhead shark and attempts to butcher it, but Julia catches sight of their pursuer and orders the children to run. They stumble upon a field littered with toxic waste barrels, yet Julia pushes them onward, knowing the killer is close behind. Navigating through piles of discarded plastic, Julia realizes Ben is severely dehydrated and gives him the last drops of water. Cassie breaks down, convinced they will not survive, but Julia insists they must keep moving. Eventually, they discover the wreckage of a plane that had sunk long ago and crawl inside for rest. Julia reflects on their family's past, recalling the first time she met Tom, who was hospitalized after a diving accident. The children weep, saying their final goodbyes to him. Later, Cassie is awakened by a noise and slips outside, only to find the killer approaching her. Unbeknownst to him, she is biding her time as bait. Just as he reaches for her, Julia ambushes him, plunging the knife into his side. At dawn, the family prepares to continue their journey, only to find the killer's body has been picked apart, an ominous sign that something even more dangerous lurks nearby. They press on as Julia checks the map, but Ben suddenly dashes ahead, ignoring her calls. He finds a salty puddle and drinks greedily, but soon falls ill. They construct a makeshift shelter with some plastic chairs, and Julia hears unsettling noises outside. Venturing out, she confronts a new threat that compels her to wake the children and flee. In the distance, they spot a large ship surrounded by scattered containers. Julia calls out for help, but the frightened people retreat into a container, locking the doors behind them as a swarm of giant crabs descends upon them. The family climbs atop a container, but the crabs manage to wound Julia in the leg. Despite her injury, Julia watches in horror as the crabs overwhelm the desperate people inside. As she ties a scarf around her leg and passes out, she wakes up alone, terrified, and calls for her children. It turns out they've gone in search of food. While Ben examines the weapons they found, Julia cauterizes her wound. They uncover some food and water hidden in a deceased person's pocket.